Back and welcome to the Quiet Authority. This is my live stream today, and I am recording this, so you're probably listening to it either live or maybe on one of my social media channels. But in this live stream podcast, The Quiet Authority, I train people on how to become more persuasive communicators, whether it's in your writing, your speaking from stage, your webinars, your marketing, anything where you're using words to sell an idea, a product, or service to somebody else is persuasive communication or influential communication. And the topic today is, can persuasive communication be learned? This is a very good question. And it's really important that you watch this if you believe that it can be learned and you're having a hard time learning it. I'm going to drop something on you today that's going to make it even easier for you to do that. And this is something that is so simple. It only takes you about 30 seconds a day to do it. And it will dramatically change and accelerate your learning and your mastery of the skill of persuasive communication. Now, I have applied the principles that I teach in every type of medium. I specialize in helping people create marketing content that goes out there onto the internet and that attracts them prospects who don't come to them with price negotiations and competitor comparisons and let me think about it and all these objections and these stone walls to actually closing a deal. When you communicate in the way that I teach and you have content out there that does that job, it takes you out of the equation so that you don't have to constantly sell, tell, explain, justify your prices, talk about what's different between you and the competitors. And more importantly, when you can communicate this way in your content, whether it's your book or your ads or your social media content, it eliminates the need for you to stay stuck in your warm network. And this is a really, really big point for people who are selling expert services or like coaching programs or something like that, where people are paying you a lot of money for a very valuable service. And maybe you're in that place right now where you're stuck inside your warm network. And most of your sales, let's face it, come to you through people who already know you and who all these fear barriers and trust barriers are mostly brought down. And you're basically just an order taker. You're not really closing the people on your services. They're already ready to go. Well, imagine how your life would change if your warm network suddenly expanded to reach hundreds of thousands or millions of people. That's what can happen when you have content out there that does your selling for you, so that when people come to you, someone maybe who you hadn't even heard of yesterday comes to you ready to pay exactly what you're worth for your projects, for your hourly rate, whatever it is, because they are already sold. In other words, your content did the job that you would normally do on a sales call or on a webinar from stage. When you communicate the way that I teach, you don't have to constantly show up to get people to say yes and wrestle through all these objections like, let me think about it. And this competitor offered me the quote same thing for lower price. It's really frustrating to hear that every single day and to be working like a hunter gatherer that's out there clubbing their food over the head and dragging it back into the cave and doing all the work, instead of being more like an agriculturist where you're just planting seeds and you're letting things grow and maybe coming out there and tending to your crops every once in a while. If you like the sound of that, this is going to be one of the most important podcasts that you can follow, because I teach people something that nobody else in the world teaches, and that is how to learn, drill every day the techniques of persuasive communication, the language of persuasive communication, to a point where no matter where you're showing up, whether it's in writing, whether it's in a speech, whether it's in a webinar, that your communication actually does the job that you're doing one-on-one or one-to-many selling right now. And so that is the value of this, is that it turns you from a chaser into an attractor. You're attracting people who come to you without price resistance, without ideological resistance. And by that, I mean that they've hired you already, but they're still resisting taking your advice. They're listening to all kinds of other advisors, and you're always having to like bat down these objections and explain why your way is still the best way. That's called ideological resistance. And then there's price resistance, competitor resistance, comparisons, all these things you have to deal with that bottleneck your business, because the only people who actually become your clients are people who you work really, really hard for and have these one-on-one conversations. And people who grow their businesses, experts who grow their businesses, they're all attraction marketers. I've been helping those people for over 20 years now to accomplish that through becoming a more persuasive communicator. And again, I mean in your writings, in your videos. In fact, there's two things you need to know about persuasive communication that'll make it easier and accelerate your mastery. The first thing is that persuasive communication is a language. Now, you might think I'm being philosophical with that, but it's actually very practical. Think about the way that you learned the language that you speak fluently right now. You speak it as easily as you breathe. And there was a time in your life when that seemed almost impossible for you to learn it. You probably don't even remember it, but I remember it when I was first learning the English language. I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I was identifying those little sticky magnet alphabet letters. And my mom poured them out onto the bed and wouldn't let me get off the bed until I named every single one of them. And I was like, I thought I was in hell for a while. It was really, really hard to learn. And now here I am 50 years later, and I went from there to putting letters together into utterances, into words, into sentences, into complex concepts. You learn language the same way, and now it's easy for you. Same thing with driving. It probably seemed really impossible at first, right? You were clutching the steering wheel, afraid to even take your eyes off the road, touch your air conditioner or your controls, because you were afraid you were going to swerve off the road if you even took one hand off the steering wheel. Well, now today you can probably drive without any hands on the steering wheel at all. I don't recommend that, but you could do it. It comes very naturally and very easily to you because someone came along who monitored the process of you learning, and it seemed impossible for a while, but you eventually got it and now it's easy. My point is that persuasive communication can be the same way. It can be something that you slowly learn, gradually drill, master every single day, the same way that you learn the language that you speak right now until 12, 18 months from now, you look at how you're communicating and the results you're getting from people, and you're like, when did I get so good at this? You ever had that happen when you learn something that seemed impossible and then one day it just comes naturally? Persuasive communication can be the same way, but here's the catch. The way that most people are teaching it and most people are learning it is not like that. It's not this incremental step-by-step system where you learn one technique, then you build one on top of that, then one on top of that, then one on top of that, the same way that you learn to utter sounds, turn those into words, turn those into sentences, turn those into paragraphs and complex ideas. And now maybe you're writing books. Most people don't learn persuasive communication that way. They learn it through kind of grabbing a YouTube video here, a book there, going to a seminar there. And most of the people teaching persuasive communication, including people who are really good at it themselves, they don't really know how to teach it. They may not even be aware of what they're doing. It's such a subconscious process that they can't package it in such a way to where you can learn it, read it, drill it, master it, and really get good at it. And so, can persuasive communication be learned? Absolutely. But you got to stop seeing it as a talent, because a talent is something that people are born with. A language is different. It's a skill that you can learn. It's the same way with persuasive communication. If you're struggling with it right now, maybe it's because of the way you're thinking about it. You still think it's this rare talent that some people have and some people don't. You kind of try to model those people, watch their body language, their facial expressions. You try to copy them, and you're still not getting the results, because those aren't the things that actually make the person persuasive. It's something else that you can't quite place your finger on until you start learning what I teach. Then you're going to be able to spot everywhere exactly what a person is doing that's making them more persuasive, whether it's in their book, in their webinar, their social media content. It gives you like these 3D, like X-ray glasses to where you can just see through every single technique that a person's using. And you'll even be able to watch people who are master persuaders and say, hey, they could have done this here. They could have done this better. And that is the value of learning it in a step-by-step, incremental, progressive way, so that anytime you sit down to write a book, to create a piece of social media content, to get on the phone with somebody, to do a webinar presentation, to do a stage speech, you know exactly what to say first, what to say second, what to say third, when to shift your energy or shift your technique based on how people are responding to you, based on the metrics that you're seeing on social media. You can't do that if you're just kind of grabbing a YouTube video here or there, picking up a technique here and there. If you're not learning persuasive communication as a step-by-step process, which we'll talk about in just a second, you're always going to struggle with it. It's going to take you a lot longer to learn it. It's going to be a lot more trial and error. And you're going to sound weird. It's like, a person learns a different language in their foreign tongue and they always speak with an accent. Well, you may be, metaphorically speaking, the language of persuasive communication with an accent. You just feel weird when you're doing it. You feel inauthentic when you're doing it. And you're thinking there's got to be something else to it. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. But that's the first thing, is understanding that persuasive communication is a language that you learn the same way you learn any other language. And yes, you can get good at it. But what I want you to do is look at yourself in the eye, in the mirror every morning and say, I once believed that persuasive communication was a talent. And I now understand that it's a language that I am learning, drilling, and mastering every day. Now, why did I tell you to do that? Because that's going to change your beliefs, your paradigm. It's going to change the metaphorical framework from which you understand this, and it's going to erase all that resistance in your mind and your nervous system to getting good at this, which you do have right now if you believe it's a talent, because you're believing that it's just something you're born with or not born with, right? Or that comes very naturally to some people. And if your brain believes that, then that's how it's going to learn. It's going to be very hard. It's going to resist you learning it because it doesn't believe that it's a skill. The reason I want you to acknowledge how you used to think about persuasive communication is because a really effective affirmation doesn't just paint over the old belief with a new belief. That creates resistance. And because your mind resists denial, it's called cognitive dissonance, right? You try to put a new idea on top of an old one and they fight each other. You acknowledge the old one, you link a new one to it, and then your brain has a new association. Oh, that's what I used to believe. This is what I believe now, right? That's why I want you to do that every day. Now, the second thing, before I get into the actual frameworks and how to apply this in your content and get better results, that second thing is there are so many myths in the marketing world. It's astonishing. I hear them on a daily basis. In fact, I'll share a story with you. I had a client I just spoke to yesterday who owns an e-commerce brand, and I've been training her in my persuasion techniques. Yes, this does work if you're selling products, services, e-commerce. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll talk about that in a second. And she was acquiring customers for about $170 a piece. It was costing her $170 from her paid ads to get a new customer. That's a lot of money for someone who's selling a $70 product. Now, after just applying some of my techniques, she's only paying $32 to get a new customer. So she's got a little bit of profit margin in there. And now all she's got to do is upsell them other things, and she can just scale her ad spend and probably build a 6 or 7 figure business doing that. All because she changed one thing, and that is how she communicated with her audience, right? Your messaging is the most important thing in your marketing. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what theory someone has. Over the past 20 years, I've been testing my system across literally hundreds of different, probably thousands of different businesses, dozens of niches, every type of media, online and offline that you can imagine. And the rules of persuasive communication do not change simply because you're on TikTok or you're on Pinterest or on YouTube or something like that. They're universal. So when you learn these, it's going to change the way you communicate everywhere, whether you're writing a book, doing a speech, I don't care what it is. Okay. That I said all that to say this. One of the myths out there is that human behavior in psychology somehow magically changes just because you're speaking through a different media. That's silly. Okay. I don't care if you're communicating through a paid ad, a video, on TikTok, on YouTube. Anybody who tells you, who claims to be a marketing expert, who says that things are dramatically different on YouTube than they are on LinkedIn, on Facebook than they are on LinkedIn, or whatever, or offline than they are on online, there's a few subtle differences. But if you understand the basics of persuasive communication, which are based on biology and psychology, those things do not change because you're showing up somewhere else. The things I teach apply whether you're writing a book, doing a stage presentation, doing a print ad. I don't care what it is. And so imagine just for a moment if you had that type of skill where every single place you communicated with your audience, every place, you had a predictable framework that you could follow, that you could not only get the types of results you want, but if you didn't get the results, you would actually know which point in the process to say, okay, here, I need to improve this part right here. That's what I teach people. I don't teach people to guess and to try to find the hottest hooks for YouTube or hooks for Pinterest or hooks for Facebook. All that's nonsense. It doesn't matter where you're showing up. What matters is that you know how to communicate with people. So we've covered a lot of myths here. First of all, the myth that persuasion is some sort of a talent, right? Or it's something that you're born with is baloney. It's a language. And that's why I want you to do that affirmation in the mirror every morning. And you can add to it. And I know that it doesn't matter where I'm showing up, what media I'm communicating through, I'm applying the basic principles of human psychology in my influential communication. And that is where I'm effective everywhere I show up. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, this sounds really good. There's obviously Seth has a process that he uses to teach people persuasive communication. And I'm going to show you what that is in just a second. But first, I want to tell you something that you probably won't hear from anybody else. The system that I use is not something I read in a book or learned in a seminar somewhere. It came to me through a lot of years, decades of trial and error, managing call centers, writing sales scripts, writing webinar copy, writing website copy, writing offline ads, billboards, print emails, everything you can imagine, text messages. and testing and seeing the feedback from the audience and going, okay, that worked, this didn't work, let's try this, let's see what psychology is behind this. And I've pieced together over that time a process for making anybody more persuasive in their communication. And there's nobody out there who has anything like what I have. Okay. Because, well, there's people who claim to have it, but the people who tell you that, typically what they're teaching you is something that worked really well in their business in one niche. And now they're saying it'll work for anybody, which is not true. So that's the first thing I want you to know, is that there is a predictable, progressive way that you can learn to do this and apply it. And more importantly, you can troubleshoot your results through whatever media channel you're communicating with, and you can improve them if you understand the things that I teach. If not, you're going to have to go out there and read some book by somebody who may have made their framework off the top of their head, or maybe tested it in one business in one niche, instead of pressure testing it over decades, online, offline, in different niches, different businesses with different audiences. I mean, which sounds better to you? Okay. So now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. I do enroll a lot of clients into my business, but most of them come from my warm network. I want to grow my business, but I can't grow outside of that because people either A, they aren't finding me, or B, when someone comes to me who I don't know, they've got all kinds of resistance to my price. They're comparing me to competitors. They're giving me all kinds of objections. They're delaying, they're ghosting, they're doing all these really like time consuming, annoying things, frustrating things. And you don't know how to get out of that box. I promise you that if that's happening to you, it's because of your messaging. I'm just as certain of that as I am that the sun is going to come up tomorrow morning, because I have seen this over and over and over and over and over. And I could say over a zillion other times. So now you're probably thinking, okay, so what is the first thing I need to do to make my messaging more effective, regardless of where I'm showing up? I want you to become aware of three things that we're going to talk about in today's video. Three things. Number one is posture. Posture is the energy that, I'm not talking about woo-woo energy. When I say energy, I'm not talking about that. I'll explain in a second. Posture has to do with the way that you show up. Have you ever read somebody's book or seen their video or gone to their webinar, and you can instantly tell that they're a person of authority and leadership? They speak with a lot of confidence. They're very direct. They may use a lot of expert terminology. They're very directive and very confident. Now, you've probably heard people say, well, that's how you're supposed to communicate, right? That's actually not true. I'll tell you why in just a second. That can backfire on you. Now, you do need to know how to communicate like an authority and to be directive and to talk to people as if you're the expert. But if you overdo it, people are going to see that you're looking down on them. They're going to feel condescended to. They're also not going to feel like you're relatable. They're going to think this person probably knows a lot about what they do, but they don't understand my situation because blank. And listen, everybody has an excuse for why your system isn't going to work in their business. Whether it's valid or not, they have it. And if they don't feel like you are also relatable, more like a peer than an authority, you can wear out the authority posture. So here's where a lot of people go wrong. In the beginning of their webinar, in the beginning of their book, they have been taught, show up as an authority, be confident, sound directive, sound like you know what you're talking about. And it starts to work for a little while, but then there's this resistance that they run into when they go to close a deal or ask for the action or get them on the call. And the person at the end of the call says, let me think about it, or let me talk to my spouse, or whatever it is. It's because you're showing up as too much of an authority, right? It's important that you do this, but there's actually 4 postures that you need to be able to mix and balance within every single presentation you do. And if you don't do this, you will get a little trickle of results, but you'll always get resistance at some point. They'll drop off of your video. They'll leave your website. They'll leave your webinar. They'll stick around your webinar, but won't buy anything at the end. They'll sit there at the speech that you're giving and be checking their phone or their watch, which I know is really annoying when you're speaking from stage, because you are overdoing one of these 4 postures. So that's the first thing. And this is really common when experts write books. They come right out of the gate in the introduction or chapter 1, speaking as an authority, speaking about their ideas, giving testimonials, doing all this stuff. And they're like, that's what I'm supposed to do. No, it's not. That's not what you do in the beginning of a book or a webinar or any long form presentation. The first thing you got to do is you got to embody the second posture. I got to take a drink because I'm parched here. The second posture is empathy. This is being relatable. This is being the person who sounds like someone they could sit down and have a beer or a kava or a tea with. It's like you're their friend. and they listen to you, and maybe you're vulnerable, and maybe you expose some of your weaknesses, and you tell your story about your underdog story about where you were before you discovered all this stuff. This is called being relatable. Now, you can overdo this too. And there's a lot of people out there who say you got to be relatable in your book, and you're relatable in your book, and you're relatable on your webinar, and no one buys from you. You ever wonder why that is? Because if you're too relatable, think about this. Think about that person you know who is an expert. They're a good friend of yours, and you would never pay them for what they do because they're your friend, right? Or let's flip it this way: that person who knows you, who needs your expertise, needs your service very badly, but never pays you for it, but always wants to go out and like pick your brain and wants you to hook them up with your next course or something like that. In other words, they see you as their buddy. And because of that, well, it's kind of like your uncle's a plumber and you have a plumbing problem and you don't want to pay him for it. You want him to come over and do it for free because he's your uncle. If you embody the relatable empathy posture too much, that's exactly how your clients are going to see you. So that's why you're probably thinking, well, that means I need to balance it out with the leadership. Now you're thinking the right way. Now, the question is, and I can actually do this. I've done this in some of my sales training with people where they come to me. I have a whole book I've written on the 4 postures. It's called Sales Sorcery. And I will load that into AI and I'll say, learn these 4 postures and how they work within a sales conversation. And then I'll take a transcript of that person's most recent sales conversation, put it in the AI, and it will troubleshoot and tell exactly where you overdid the leadership posture, where you didn't show up in the posture soon enough, where you didn't transition when you should have, or you spent too much time in the empathy posture. Okay. It's a balance between the 4. We got 2 more to talk about. But if you miss this, will you still get some sales? Yeah, you'll get some. You'll get some of that low hanging fruit that's ready to drop to the ground, but you won't get that high hanging fruit that allows you to scale to 6, 7, 8, 9 figures. It will never happen. And even people who don't know what I'm talking about, they do it instinctively. Maybe they were raised around someone who did it. Maybe they just learned it so early in life that it became a subconscious process. And now they can't teach it to you because they don't even know what they're doing, right? But these are the 4 postures: leadership, empathy, right? Those 2. Now, the third posture is, you've probably heard this one before too, where people say, give away a lot of value, right? It's called the service posture. The service posture is where you show up as a servant. You're helping them solve problems without charging them money. You're giving away free tips, freebies in your books, your social media videos, your webinar, whatever it is. Now, this is important to do, but it can also backfire big time. And I'm going to tell you how in just a second. But first, let me tell you the psychology of the service posture. There was a study done, actually multiple studies, where they sat 2 people at a table. And this person over here, there was $100. Sometimes it was $1,000. Sometimes it was more than that. But let's say $100. This person over here was given $100, and this person decided how it was going to be distributed between them and this person. So sometimes this person decided it was going to be 50-50, sometimes 80-20, sometimes 60-40. They decided that. The second person at the table decided whether they were both going to get to keep the money and walk away from it. Now, here's what they found that's very, very interesting about human psychology. If this person over here didn't feel like the distribution was fair, they would walk away from the deal, even if the money they would have gotten from it would have covered a month's worth of their expenses. Now, think about that for a second. I mean, you're like, I'd walk away and take the money, right? That's what my daddy say. He didn't take the money when they hand it to you. Just take it, Junior. But seriously, people need to feel like they're getting some sort of value in return or before they buy from you. Otherwise, they're going to feel like it's not fair. That's why the service posture is very important. If you don't do it, you're going to run into that type of resistance that study revealed. And they did it across all kinds of cultures. They did it in many different settings with different amounts of money, and the results were about the same. So it's important to embody the service posture, but it can also backfire on you. And you've probably experienced this, where a person gets to the end of your presentation like, this is great information, thanks a lot, and then they're gone. Right? Like you gave them too much, or they say, let me think about it. And you're like, what happened? I gave them so much value. That's the problem. You gave them too much value. You gave them too much to think about. You gave them a false sense of confidence, and that's why they ghosted you at the end of the call, or they didn't buy at the end of your webinar. They stayed all the way to the end. They followed you on social media because they want to get more free stuff, but you overdid the service posture. And here's the danger. Listen very carefully to this. This is huge. Here is the danger of overdoing any of those 3 postures. I'll talk about the 4th posture in a second. The danger of overdoing this is that that impression of you being too much of an authority, too much of a peer, or too much of a servant, it calcifies in their mind like concrete drying, and they see you that way every single time you show up after that, and you have just lost your ability to convert that person in the future. And this is called burning your market. This is a really scary thing, because if you get a reputation out there for being too much in one of these postures and too many people get to know you that way, those people will never buy from you. You'll never, it's like burning all the crops in a field and then pouring gasoline on the field so no crops can grow there again, right? You're burning your market. So that's the danger of this. So whatever you're doing right now there out there in the marketplace, you need to start embodying these four postures in a balance. And I can help you with this if you want to join my group coaching or one-on-one, or I can help you with your content or presentation. But if you don't stop what you're doing and start doing this now, you're going to continue burning a lot of potential relationships because you're showing too much in one of these postures. You're not balancing them out. Now, the fourth posture is the master of all the other three. It's called the listening posture. And don't assume you know what I mean by that. Let me explain it to you. Listening is how you understand how you show up as a leader, how you show up with empathy, how you show up as a servant, and more importantly, when you do which within the process of either your book, your webinar, your stage presentation, your videos, whatever it is, and when to transition and how to balance out all those three. And if you don't understand your target market, you will not be able to do this. You can't use AI to do it. AI does not understand human behavior well enough to where it can do this. I know I just told you I use AI sometimes, but I have it read my book first, and then I actually sit there and govern the process and make sure it doesn't go off the rails. Right? That's what I do when I'm coaching people. AI is good for computation, but it doesn't really understand human behavior nearly as well as it thinks it does. It's a huge problem. And that problem is actually going to get worse for a reason I'll probably talk about later. But you need to be able to watch the reactions of your audience, whether you're speaking from stage, from a webinar, on a one-on-one call, or watch their reactions on your metrics on social media or on your funnel or on your ads. And you have to understand where you overdid each posture. Now, I know this sounds complicated, but simple is really good if you're trying to change a tire or bake a cake. Simple is not good when you're trying to build a complex marketing system that accomplishes a goal that I'm talking about. In fact, one of our biggest problems in this society is our obsession to find simple solutions for complex problems. Simple works fine until you want to build a space shuttle or an automobile. Most of the really amazing technologies that have made our life so amazing today are not simple. They're very complicated. We don't even understand how they work. If they stop working, we got to take them to a specialist. Think about that for a second. So simple is fine for getting to a level of mediocre success. But if you really want to become one of these 1% entrepreneurs, you need to understand that there's a complex process that you've got to embrace, and you got to stop looking for shortcuts. So if this sounds complicated, yes, it's complicated. But the question is, how bad do you want the result? So the listening posture helps you understand a couple of things that most experts miss. And what I'm about to tell you is, I would say, the most common mistake people make in sales and marketing. And it's so costly, it's astonishing. In fact, that person I just told you about, and I could tell you several more success stories like that, that was really the only thing she changed. And it's this: you got to understand how your prospects, how your audience is thinking about the problem that you help them solve or the outcome you help them get. Now, you might think, well, I already know that. I bet you don't. Unless you're already getting astonishing results, you probably don't know, because you speak in expert language and they speak in layman language. That's why they need you. So if your videos, the opening to your webinar, the introduction to your book, the back page copy to your book, whatever it is, doesn't speak in a language that they recognize as a conversation that goes on in their head every day when they think about the problem, they won't pay any more attention to you. They'll just ignore you. They'll click away from the video, and you'll be like, what the heck? I was about to give away some good information in there, but they didn't feel like you really understood them as they are right now. And the only way to learn that is the listening posture. There's different ways. When I say listening, I don't mean you're sitting there one-on-one with your ears listening to people. There's ways to listen to people, even if you've never met them before, and you see the way they're responding on your social media channels, your website metrics, whatever it is. But the listening posture informs the other three. Now, that's just the first thing. There's actually two other things that I teach when I teach persuasion and when I help people rework their messaging, their book, their webinar, whatever it is. But that's the first one. Now you're probably thinking, well, okay, so what do I say first? How do I grab people's attention, right? That's the big question today, because attention is like it's the most valuable thing in the world today, sort of. You ever notice how sometimes you grab someone's attention and then you lose it right away, and you think, well, I lost their attention, I got to hold their attention longer. That's wrong. And if you keep thinking that way, you're going to struggle, because it's not about holding their attention. It's about turning their attention into interest. And that's a totally different thing. When a person becomes interested, someone's attention is just like, okay, I'm going to look at this for a second. I'm going to read this. I'm going to listen to this. That's it. Interest is when they go, I'm going to keep listening, keep reading, because I think this person is going to say something that's going to be really valuable to me. So I'm going to stick around and find out what it is. Now, what that does in the person's brain is it releases these chemicals called dopamine and oxytocin and norepinephrine and all these feel good chemicals that literally light up your nervous system. And you feel differently when you're listening to someone who you're truly interested in hearing what they have to say next. You can grab a person's attention, and if you fail to create that chemical release that I'm talking about right now, they will leave. They may stick around for like 2, 3 minutes, but they're going to leave really quick. So if your content is just like people are ignoring it, they're not clicking the like button, they're not going through to your page, people are seeing it, but they're not going any more forward than the first few seconds. That is why, because you probably are getting their attention. Maybe you're not. We'll talk about how to get attention in a minute, but attention transformed into interest. So, are you starting to see where the thing you say in the beginning of your message, the beginning of your book, the beginning at the top of your website, whatever it is about grabbing attention, but the next thing you say has to turn that attention into interest, or you are going to lose them right there. And I can look at your website metrics, your funnel, your webinar presentation. I can look at the very place where you lost them, and I can tell you what you did wrong. Psychologically speaking, to fail to turn attention into interest. That's how precise the system I teach is. You're starting to see what I mean by persuasion being a language. I mean, if you can drill down to the proper grammar, like what the order of the sentence is supposed to be like, you can troubleshoot anyone speaking, right? If you understand a language at this level of detail, you can very quickly correct yourself and figure out what you did wrong instead of just guessing all the time, which is what most of us are doing. So there's attention into interest. Now, people who are interested. They are not buyers. You have to do something after you've created interest, and that's turn interest into desire. Desire means that the person not only is interested in hearing what you have to say, but they want to believe you and they want to take action on what you're going to say next. Now, that won't get them to buy. We'll talk about the next thing in a second. But you can get their attention, you can turn attention into interest, and you can still lose them at a certain point in your book, at a certain point in your presentation, your sales call. And you can feel this when you're talking to somebody one-on-one or you're talking live. You can just feel where you lose the audience, but you don't always know why. And you're like, I got to get their attention back. No, you don't. The thing is, you failed to turn attention into interest, or you failed to turn interest into desire. And once you understand this and you can see it, you can correct yourself. That's what my system does really well. Attention, interest, desire. What is desire? Desire is the contrast between the pain they're currently in because of the problem you're going to help them solve and the hope of the thing that you're going to help them get, right? When a person at the same time feels the pain of where they are now and feels a strong desire to have the thing, it creates this vibrational state in their nervous system called cognitive dissonance. That's that feeling, that uneasy feeling you have when you're holding two contradicting ideas together, two contradicting emotions, right? Your body is forced to move when you feel that way. It's forced to. It has to re-regulate itself. You can't stay in that state of mind, or it'll literally start to break your cells down. It'll drive you crazy. It'll fill your mind with all kinds of crazy negative thoughts. So if you create that state and get them into a state of desire, now they're going to move to the next thing. So you got attention, interest, desire. If you get attention, turn it into interest, but you don't create desire, the next thing that I tell you to do is not going to work. And you're going to be so frustrated because you're going to think, I feel like I did everything right when it comes to this next thing. But if you didn't turn it into desire first, it's not going to matter, right? So attention, interest, desire. The fourth thing is trust. Now, you're probably thinking, well, of course, I know marketing is all about trust, but did you know that trust is not rational? There are actually four dimensions of trust that I talk about in my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. I talk about the scientific studies that prove that these work, and some of these would surprise you. The reasons that people decide who to trust are probably not what you think, right? Maybe you think, well, I just got to have a bunch of testimonials out there. But maybe you have a page with a lot of testimonials and success stories and people still aren't buying. It's because that's only one piece of the puzzle. Trust is irrational. People actually trust people for four reasons: character, competence, convenience, and charisma. I don't have time to get into those, but they're all in my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. If you nail all four of those with someone who you grab their attention, turn it into interest, turn it into desire, and you nail all four of those in the end of your presentation, in the bottom of your website, once they get down there on your cart page, whatever it is, no matter where you're showing up, if you nail all four of those, then you've only got one more hurdle to cross to get them to say yes without the resistance they normally have. But are you starting to see how this works? Now you're probably wondering, how do the postures fit into that? That's a topic for another day, but these two pieces do fit together: attention, interest, desire, trust, and then action. A person can trust you. You ever had somebody say, "Oh, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to sign up with you," but they still don't do it? That person probably is, you're probably thinking, well, there needs to be more trust. It's not more trust, it's action. That's a different thing. That person probably already trusts you because they believe they're going to do it. They're just going to wait until like their dog's hangnail heals or whatever, or their mortgage gets paid off, or their kids get back in school, or whatever it is. They have some excuse not to do it right now. That's the very last step in the persuasion process, and that is converting trust into action. And the huge, huge, huge mistake people make at that stage is they're like, well, I got to pour on more desire. I got to make them want the thing more. I got to build more trust. You've already done that. There's something else you do to get people to take action, which we won't get into today, but this is all in my books and I teach it in my coaching programs. Attention, interest, desire, trust, action. Now, at those different steps in the process, you embody a different one of the four postures and you balance them out. And you're probably, well, why don't you tell me where I should put each posture inside the step, and then I'm going to go try this. Well, here's the third thing, and this is the most important thing that I teach. And it's in almost all of my books. It's in my book, 10 Persuasive Copywriting Techniques. It's in my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. It's in a whole bunch of the books that I have. In fact, there's one that I have that I'm writing right now called From Author to Authority, that tells you how to turn one book into a full attraction marketing ecosystem. And it talks about how all three of these fit together. And the third one is awareness. Again, sounds philosophical, but I want you to think about something. The person you're talking to may be completely unfamiliar with the problem that you solve, except for they're familiar with the symptoms. They're living in the symptoms, but they don't know the problem. They don't know the name of it. And they don't even know how urgent and critical it is. It's getting very urgent and very critical, right? The symptoms are compounding. It's getting worse every single day. So at some point, they're going to want to buy from you, but they're very early in the discovery process. They're just experiencing the symptoms. The symptoms are starting to get worse. They're starting to get a little bit worried, but that's a stage one prospect. Their awareness. Now, what do you think is going to happen if you go to that person with an offer for your product or service? They are not going to listen to you. They're going to think, oh, they're just trying to sell me something. This problem's not that serious. I got this other thing that's going to fix it, or I'll worry about it later. And this is a huge, huge mistake that people make when they're selling, is they go immediately for saying, here's why we're the best business marketing agency, the best acupuncturist. They try to sell the category, why they are the best in their category. And this person out here is thinking, what are you even talking about? They don't understand the problem you solve well enough for you to even have that conversation. And this is a huge mistake, because most salespeople and marketers talk to everybody like they're at the third stage of awareness. And the most valuable people are the people in stage one, where they're experiencing the symptoms. The symptoms are starting to accelerate, and they're going to do something at some point in the future. And imagine what would happen in your business if you became the first person on that person's radar as the symptoms were starting to get worse. Now, by the time they get all the way to stage three, they're so familiar with you, it's a laydown. They're going to say yes. They're not going to have price resistance, but you need to know how to connect with them at that stage. So the way you apply the postures that we talked about and the 5 steps of attention, interest, desire, trust, action is going to be different depending on which stage of awareness most of your audience is in. This is a common marketing problem. Now, stage 2 is where they know the problem by name and they're searching for a solution, right? Again, totally different prospect. What do you think is going to happen if you talk to those people about why you're the best in your category? They're not going to listen either, because they're looking at a bunch of different categories of solution. Maybe some do-it-yourself options. Maybe they know somebody who's going to help them solve the problem. Maybe they're going to watch some YouTube videos or hire a different type of expert that sort of solves the problem that you solve, but is in a different business category. You can't come right out and tell that person why you're the best in your category. They're not even sold on your damn category yet. And again, this is a mistake a lot of people make, is they talk to everybody like they're at stage 3. A person at stage 2 needs to be, it's really important for you to create interest and desire for that person and to embody the empathy posture until it's time to embody the leadership posture and a little bit of the service posture right in there. But that's stage 1 and 2. Stage 3 is where everybody tries to reach their prospects, and it's the most competitive, cluttered marketplace. And this is why a lot of people struggle, because they only know how to talk to stage 3 people, and they talk to everybody like they're a stage 3 person. They wonder why they're alienating the rest of their audience, or worse, why by the time a prospect is ready to buy their product or service, they're already sold on somebody else. They've been referred. They've got somebody else in mind that they're comparing you to, and that person ends up getting their business. See the problem? See. So this is how all these things work together. And yes, you can do this whether you're doing a book or webinar, whatever it is, a sales page, a VSL. I don't care what it is, a sales call. You have to understand which stage of awareness a person is starting from. Otherwise, you will lose them so quick, your head will spin. Or worse, you'll get them all the way into the presentation. You'll do all that work and they still won't buy because you didn't start with the right stage of awareness. So there's stage 3. Stage 4 is where the person knows who you are. They've pretty much decided they're going to select you from your competitors, but they have not made a money decision yet. They've not paid money. And yes, those people are not closed. We like to act like they're closed. Oh, they're going to give me the money Tuesday. They're going to give me the money Wednesday. And then they don't. They ghost you because you're not treating them like a stage 4 prospect. You're treating them like someone who's already closed. So can you see the problem now? This is why most people are failing with their books, with their sales funnels. There's a specific type of sales funnel, by the way, that works for stage 1 and doesn't work for stage 2. You've probably heard about sales funnels. Maybe you've tried a webinar, maybe you tried a call booking, a VSL, a tripwire, you tried challenges, all these different things, and you still haven't gotten the result. It's because you haven't matched the type of sales funnel to the stage of awareness, right? Stage 1 has a very specific type of funnel that works really well for it, and all other funnels pretty much bomb for a stage 1 person. If most of your people are stage 1 and you've tried a bunch of funnels and nothing's worked, I promise you this is why. Stage 2, same thing. There's a very specific type of funnel that's very effective for them. Pretty much all other types of funnels fail. Same thing with stage 3, same thing with stage 4. And if you're doing strictly call bookings, like you're DMing people and your only offer is to get them on a sales call with you, what do you think is going to happen if you're getting a bunch of stage 1 and stage 2 people on your sales calls? A bunch of them are going to be there only for information, only for curiosity. They're not going to pay much attention to what you have to say. And even if they do, they're going to ghost you at the end of it because you didn't understand where they were starting from. And so bottom line, because we're going to wrap things up in a second here, and then I'm going to tell you how, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Seth, this is exactly what I need in my messaging, I'm going to tell you how you can work with me. I don't have any one-on-one spots right now. I'm full. And I'm taking on a new book project. So if you're looking to write a book or revise a book, I can help you, but there will be a waiting list. Okay. If you're interested in talking to me about that, hope you're ready to be a little bit patient about this. Group coaching, I still have some openings for, which is where I prefer you start. But let's talk about how you're actually going to use this. The first thing I want you to do is just start paying attention to which posture you're embodying in all of your content. Are you overdoing the leadership posture? Are you overdoing the empathy posture? Are you overdoing the service posture? Are you only showing up in one of them? Or are you starting to think about, when do these people need me to show up as this person, as this person, as this person? And then you apply the listening posture and figure out, okay, well, that's actually the listening posture right there, is paying attention to where people are dropping off, how you're losing them versus how you're speaking. And you're probably thinking, well, Seth, how do I know this? I promise you that if you listen to this video that I'm doing right now every single day, every day for the next 30 days, your brain will start to absorb this principle and you'll start noticing when you're doing things wrong and you'll start correcting course really quickly, really quickly. So I just want you to start paying attention to which posture you're embodying. That's the first thing. The second thing I want you to pay attention to is where you are losing people in your sales process. Are they seeing your videos and leaving right away? Are they leaving your website right away? Are they leaving your webinar right away? That probably means the attention and interest thing isn't happening. You're getting their attention, but not turning it into interest. If they're staying all the way to the end, they're going all the way to the bottom, but they're not taking action to go to the next step, that means you missed desire. If they're going all the way to the final step and not taking action, that means you either mistrust or action. And there's a way you can tell the difference between those two. But when I look at somebody's sales process, at their book, at their webinar presentation, at their stage presentation, at their website, the flow from one action to another, from their paid ads or their organic traffic to their website, to the lead form, to the booking form, to the post booking form, this is how I look at it. And I troubleshoot based on what psychology needs to be applied at what step. And that is how one of the things I specialize in is taking funnels that were completely dead, weren't making any money, or were losing the person money, and turning them into funnels that people can scale to 6 or 7 figure businesses, is knowing exactly where to fix what, right? The mathematics, the KPIs, the measurements of how many people you retain to each step tells you which part is broken. And the psychology we've been talking about tells you exactly how to fix it. And I don't know of anybody else in the world, maybe they're out there somewhere and I'd never heard of them. I don't know of anybody else in the world who teaches this with a level of precision and granularity that I do. Okay. So whether you have a book that maybe you're writing right now, or you put a book out there and it's not getting the results you want, or you're doing a webinar presentation, a stage presentation, you have a sales funnel, a paid ads campaign, and it's just not working, and you know you've got a good product or service because people in your warm network are buying it, but people outside of it are not, I can help you. Now, I don't help for free, right? I'm out of the service posture right now and into the leadership posture. But I have people who have come into my group coaching program with funnels that were absolutely dead, presentations that were dead, books that were dead, and getting no results, and revived them to where it's actually helping them build and scale a business that's not only profitable, but can be expanded and grown just by spending more money on marketing or more time creating organic content. Wouldn't it be nice to actually know that what you're doing is working instead of just trying a bunch of stuff out? So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'll do this one last thing here. Okay. This live is going to be on my social media for quite a while. So you're not going to lose it. You can always find me on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram or wherever I am, and you can follow and get more videos like this one. But if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Seth, I'd like to just get a little help with one marketing campaign or one presentation, I'd like to invite you to join my group coaching program. I'll put a link in here for anyone who wants to join. And I am only taking on 2 new people right now. Okay. I don't onboard a bunch of people at once because I want to get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to put this in the chat here. This is if anybody wants to join my group coaching. On that checkout page, there are multiple options. There's one-on-one. I don't have any one-on-one slots open, so please don't pick that. There's our done for you agency services. Don't pick that one because I want to talk to you first and see if we can even help you. Pick the group coaching one and let's connect. You sign up for the group coaching. My VA is going to get you access to all my materials, and then I'm going to talk to you and figure out where you're going to start. But let's recap what we talked about today because I'm getting tired. So the question is, can persuasive communication be taught? 100% it can. And if you're an expert, freelancer, you own your small business, whatever it is, and your income ceiling, I mean, you might be one of these people who can kind of feel your income ceiling every month when the big expense comes out. You feel that, that hit. The reason you're stuck there is because of your messaging. I'm 100% certain of that because I've seen this multiple times and I know how to fix it. If you're stuck and you're ready to do something about it, either sign up for the group coaching, or if you just have a couple questions, look me up on social media. My name is right here on this video. You know where to find me. I'm the only person in the world with that name. Find me either on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Send me a message and say, hey, I'm ready for the next steps. That may not mean working with me. Maybe I just have a book that I want to give you. Tell me what problem you're trying to solve. Tell me where you're stuck, and I'll tell you how I can help. That's going to be it for today, and I'll see you on the next live stream, everybody.